Hey, my name is Nick Roman, and we're going to tie my favorite Sculpin pattern. This is a deadly fly on our brown trout fisheries, as well as some of our smallmouth bass rivers that have Sculpin in them. Sculpin are a bottom-dwelling bait fish. They represent a very important food source, and I find a lot of the bigger fish in our rivers, they really do key in on Sculpins a lot of the time. What makes this pattern really special is the silhouette that it creates. Sculpins have a very broad head and a very tapered body. And using a brush or a fur brush or even using a dubbing loop with like a coyote fur or fox fur, it really creates a nice thick head on that fly that won't collapse in the water. So when you're stripping it and you're jigging it, that fly never loses its profile. And it's just a deadly fly, fishing it in the pockets and runs of most of our rivers around here. Okay, so we're going to tie Nick's Sculpin. It doesn't have a creative name. We could call it Nick's Fur Sculpin because the entire thing is tied out of fur or hair. The hook that we have in the vise is the Ahrex TP650. This is the hook that has a bit of a bend to it, so it's a 26-degree bend. You could use other hooks as well. I've tied this on all kinds of streamer hooks, but what I really like about this hook is that it does have that slight bend, which allows it to be a bit of a jig hook, as well as I really like that gap between the hook and the shank. That allows for a really big head that we're going to put on this Sculpin, as well as a rabbit strip that's going to lay along the back. So I'm still exposing a lot of that hook gap. Sometimes I worry about tying on other hooks that have a much smaller gap, and just the hooking potential if that gap is taken up by the material. So this one seems to be about right. I really like this size 2 for this Ahrex hook. You could tie it in a 4, you could tie it in a 1, but 2 seems to be a very nice, size for the Sculpins that we have in our rivers around here. This is going to be a pretty simple fly. It's only a couple materials, and I love that because then I can tie lots of them and I can lose them and I don't feel so guilty about it. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm tying with an olive thread. So I'm getting my thread on that actual hook shank. Again, I don't want to get up into that bend of the hook. I'm going to leave that without thread on it. I'm going to place the eyes right here at the bend of the hook. So they're going to sit right here. And I'm just going to get them seated with a couple of wraps. And then again, I'm going to go around and then figure 8 my thread wraps over those lead eyes, as well as a few wraps around the base of them, and that just keeps them nice and tight. So you don't want your lead eyes moving around everywhere. These lead eyes are just the generic lead color. I also really like black for this. I'm not really using them as eyes. I think I like them a lot because they really accentuate that wider profile head of, say, a Sculpin. So it's not like they're actually functioning as eyes like on a Clouser minnow or something like that. These are the small size. They're perfect for a hook this size. You could also go medium. I would stay away from the large. I just find those a little bit too heavy. So once your eyes are on, we're just going to bring our thread backwards to right about the point of the hook, maybe about halfway between the barb and the point of the hook. First thing I'm going to use is a little bit of a cross-cut rabbit strip. You don't have to use cross-cut. You can use regular old rabbit strip, and we're going to wrap it or palmer it up the shank of the hook. This is going to form the belly of the fly. You can put just your regular old rabbit in a dubbing loop if you want, but just for purposes of making things easy, I do like these cross-cut rabbit strips. So the material cross-cut rabbit, you want to make sure that it's laying down the correct way, and so that the fibers are actually pointing backwards. You don't want your fibers pointing forwards. So I'm just going to tie it in, and then I'm going to bring my thread up, and I'm just going to make a few wraps. So that's 1 wrap, 2 wraps, 3 wraps, stroking the fibers backwards. Was that 4 wraps? I lost count. All right. And so that's our light belly of the fly. Sculpins have two-toned coloration, and I think it's really important to accentuate that. So our belly is done. Now, it's really important when you're tying this that you do leave a space in between the eyes and the materials that you're tying in, and that's because we are going to put a big head on this fly. The next step that we're going to put on is, again, some more rabbit strip. This happens to be a burnt orange rabbit with a little bit of black on it. Any kind of fur that you have that isn't a bit of a burnt orange color would be great. You could use Arctic fox, rabbit, It doesn't have to have the barring on it, but I do like that. And what I'm trying to emulate here is this is just the fins of the Sculpin. Sculpins have orange colored fins, at least a lot of species of Sculpin do. And I do like that little bit of fleck of orange on the patterns, because what that'll do is act as a bit of a hotspot or a trigger for those fish. Plus this fly is a very natural coloration. There's not a lot of flash on it. So adding just a little bit of orange on it, I think gives the fish something to, see and to attack. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut a little bit of rabbit off the hide. You could palmer this as well, but then the fly gets kind of bulky. So all that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take the easy way, and I'm not gonna do it in a doubling loop, which you could. Let's just take a little bit of that material, and I'm gonna actually cut it off the hide. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to lay it on the belly of the fly and try to wrap it around so that I get a little bit of that orange poking through on the belly and the sides. And if you don't get enough, you could always add more later. There, looks great on that camera side. My side's a little light, so I'm just gonna add a little bit more here. I will be fishing this fly, so I wanna make sure I like it. All right, good enough. All right, so there we go. We got a little bit of orange on the belly and on the fins. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the body, or I guess you could call it the wing. It's not really a wing, it's more of the body because we're tying a Sculpin. And what I'm using is a black barred, grizzly colored rabbit strip. You could use whatever color you like, or whatever color matches the Sculpins in your water. Black is a good color, olive is great, tan. This natural color just seems to imitate all kinds of different bottom types and different Sculpins. They seem to take on the coloration of the bottom wherever you find them. So what I'm gonna do is I took about a 3-inch rabbit strip, and I'm gonna have to remove the fly out of the vise here, but I'm just gonna poke the hide of the rabbit strip through like that and slide it around. So bear with me for 1 second. There we go. Okay, so now it's poking through the point of the hook, and it's laying across the top of the fly. Remember, this rides just like a Clouser minnow does, and it's gonna be riding with the hook point up. So now I'm just gonna fasten the rest of the strip in, a couple thread wraps, clean it up a little bit, and there we go. We are almost done our Sculpin fly. All right, and I think that looks pretty good. Last step, and I think this is kind of what makes this fly a little bit more unique, is, as I was saying previously, I used to use a lot of Sculpin helmets, whereas at this point you would then jam a Sculpin helmet on the front end of the fly. I've started to really love using fox or coyote or some kind of fur to create that very large head on a Sculpin and create that perfect silhouette. I'm gonna use this Foxy brush. It's the 1.5-inch version. It's made by, I believe this is an EP brush. And this is in the coyote color. So this matches the rest of the fly perfectly. Obviously, if you're tying a black fly, use a black brush. If you're using olive fly, use an olive brush. But this really makes things very easy for tying quickly. You can spin a lot of them out. I know brushes cost a bit more money, but they really do save you tons and tons of time. And really they allow you to make lots of flies in a short time period. So I got my brush tied in, and I'm just gonna wrap it around, and those guard hair fibers, I do not want to trap them. I want to make sure that they are pointing backwards. And there is EP fiber mixed into this brush as well. That's just going to add even more bulk to it and create that perfect Sculpin silhouette. And I'm going to go right up to those eyes and maybe squeeze 1 or 2 more wraps in there if I can. 1 more, or am I being greedy? I think that looks pretty good, just like that. And then just tie it off with a couple of wraps of thread. Trying your best to keep the thread behind the eyes as much as possible. All right, and so you can just do the helicopter method of getting the wire off. Doesn't want to go using your scissors. There. Sorry, Chris. All right, and that's it. That's our fly. So as you can see, got a perfect Sculpin looking silhouette there. And I'm going to tie it off. And I'm going to show you what that looks like when it's wet. So there's so many different flies for Sculpins that you can fish, and I think really the most important part of any Sculpin pattern is having that wider head. As I was mentioning earlier, Slump Buster is an absolute excellent fly pattern. I think it does emulate a Sculpin a lot of the time. But my problem with the Slump Buster is when that squirrel or that rabbit does get really wet, it's going to slim right down. So I have some water here. I'm just going to get the fly really wet. And you can imagine as you're stripping it through the pool that it's going to really slim down to something like that. Now a fly like this that has that big bulky fur head on it, it's really going to maintain that bulk. So as you can see, it just looks so much more, oh, I can't get the angle correct. There we go. So much more of a Sculpin silhouette compared to, say, something like that. I hope you're going to give it a try on your local water. If you have success on it, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear about it. You can reach me on Instagram, probably the best way. My handle is @Salmographer, and I hope you enjoy fishing it.